The Third Testament, Section 11, Humanity. Chapter 51, Rulers, Abuses of Power, and Wars. The transient delusion of earthly power and greatness. 1. It is I who put the trials in your way, to stop your spirit, if he wants to go astray from the way of my law and to live alone according to his own pleasure. Investigate the reason for the trials. I allow you to do so, so that you may confirm that each one of them is like a chisel that works your heart. This is one of the reasons why pain brings you closer to me. 2. But man has always sought pleasure, seeking power and splendor, to rise up on earth to the Lord and be ruler over his own brethren. 3. Since I have created you all with the same love, why then have there always been some who pretend to be something higher? Why have there been those who rule men with the whip under humiliation? Why is there one who rejects the lowly one and whose heart remains unmoved when he causes pain to his neighbor? Because these are spirit beings, who have not yet recognized me as Father, who loves all his creatures, and also not as the only Lord of all living beings. 4. This is why there are men who seize power and disregard the sacred rights of man. They serve me as instruments of my righteousness, and although they think they are great lords and kings, they are only servants. Forgive them. 95, 7-8. 5. Behold the men and the rulers of the earth. How short is their glory and their dominion. Today they are lifted up by their peoples, and tomorrow they push them from their throne. 6. Let no one seek his throne in this life, for in the belief that to go forward it will hinder its course, and your purpose is to go forward without stopping until you come to the gates of my kingdom. 124, 31. 7. Verily, I tell you, with the powerful of today it will come to an end to make way for those who will be great and strong, powerful and wise because of love and mercy towards their neighbor. 128,50. 8. Those people who currently nurture only ambitious pursuits of power and earthly glories know that their most powerful opponent is spirituality, so they fight it. And as they anticipate the battle that is already approaching, the battle of the spirit against evil, they fear losing their possessions and therefore resist the light that constantly surprises them in the form of inspiration. 321, 12. 9. How needy are those who were great and mighty on earth when they came to my door in heaven, forgetting the spiritual treasures and the way to eternal life. While the truth of my kingdom is revealed to the humble, it is hidden from the learned and the educated, because they would do with spiritual wisdom the same thing as they did with earthly science. They would seek thrones in this light for their vanity and weapons for their quarrels. 238, 68. The presumptuous use of violence against people and nations. 10. Look at the men who are leading the nations, creating doctrines and imposing them on men. Everyone proclaims the superiority of his doctrine. But I ask you, what has been the fruit of all this? The wars with their entourage of impoverishment, suffering, destruction and death. This has been the harvest that the representatives of such theories have reaped here on earth. 11. Note that I have not opposed mankind's freedom of will, although I must tell you that regardless of that freedom, conscience constantly speaks to the heart of him who distances himself from justice, charity and reason. 106:11. 12. If Christ were to return to earth as a man at this time, he would no longer say on Golgotha, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do, for now you receive in full the light of the Spirit, and the Spirit beings have developed far. Who does not know that I am the giver of life, that therefore no one may rob that of his fellow man? If man cannot give existence, he is also not entitled to take what he cannot give back. 13 Men, do you think you are fulfilling my law just because you say that you have religion and you keep outward worship? In the law you were told, you shall not kill, but you violate this commandment by shedding the blood of your fellow men in torrents on the altar of your sin. 119, 27-28. 14 I offer peace to the world, but the pride of the great nations, with their false power and their false splendor, rejects every call of conscience, and lets itself be swept away only by its ambitions and its hatred. 15 Man does not yet bow down to the side of good, justice and reason. Men still rise up and condemn the cause of their neighbors, they still believe they can bring about justice. Do you not think that instead of judges they should rather call themselves murderers and hangmen? 16 The men of power have forgotten that there is one owner over all life, but they take the life of their neighbors as if it belonged to them. The crowds of people cry out for bread, justice, home, clothing. It is righteousness that I will create, not men nor their teaching. 151, 70-72. 17 Blessed people, those men who rise up full of self-importance and claim to power in the nations, in the peoples of the earth, are great spiritual beings, equipped with power and holders of great missions. 18 But they are not in the service of my divinity. They have not put their great gifts and abilities into the service of love and mercy. They have created for themselves their world, their law, their throne, their vassals, their domains, and all that they can aim at. 19 But when they feel their throne trembling under the afflictions, when they feel that the invasion of a mighty enemy is imminent, when they see their treasures and their name in danger, they set out with all their might, filled with delusions of grandeur, with earthly vanity, with hatred and ill will, and throw themselves against the enemy, regardless of whether their work, their idea, leaves behind them only a trail of pain, destruction, and evil. They have only the destruction of the enemy in mind, the establishment of an even greater throne, in order to have the greatest possible dominion over the peoples, over the riches, over the daily bread, and even over the lives of men. 219, 25. 20 It would be time that there were no longer any kingdoms or strong peoples on earth to oppress the weak, and yet they exist as proof that in man the primitive tendencies still prevail to rob the weak by abuse of power and to conquer them by force. 271, 58. 21 How far are men still from understanding the spiritual peace that is to reign in the world? They seek to force it by means of violence and threats, and with the fruit of their science with which they boast. 22 I am in no way ignorant of men's progress or against it, for it is also a proof of their spiritual development. But still I tell you that their pride in the use of force and earthly power is not pleasing before me. Because instead of making the cross of men easier, they desecrate the most holy principles with it. They attack the lives that do not belong to them and sow pain, tears, grief and blood instead of peace, health and well-being. Why do their works reveal just the opposite, although the well from which they draw their knowledge is my own creation, which is inexhaustible in love, wisdom, health and life? 23 I want equality among my children, as I preached it already in the second age. But not only materially, as people understand them. I inspire you to equality out of love, with which I make you understand that you are all brothers and sisters, children of God. 246, 61-63. Reflections on the Second World War. 24. These are times of trials, of pain and suffering, times in which mankind is suffering the consequences of so much mutual hatred and ill will. 25. Look at the battlefields where only the roar of weapons and the cries of fear of the wounded can be heard, the mountains of mutilated corpses that were previously strong bodies of young people. Can you imagine them as they embraced the mother, the wife or the son for the last time? Who can measure the pain of these goodbyes, who has not drunk this cup himself? 26. Thousands and thousands upon thousands of fearful parents, women and children have seen their beloved relatives leave for the fields of war, hatred, revenge, forced by the greed and arrogance of some people without light and without love for their neighbor. 27. These legions of young and strong men have not been able to return to their homes because they have been left torn to pieces in the fields, but see, the earth, Mother Earth, more merciful than men who rule the nations and believe to be masters of the lives of their fellow men, has opened her womb to receive them and cover them lovingly. 9. 63-66. 28. My spirit watches over every being, and I myself watch over the last of your thoughts. 29. Verily, I tell you, I have discovered there in the midst of the armies fighting for earthly ideologies and claims to power, in moments of rest, peace-loving and good-willed people who had been made soldiers by force. Sighs escape their hearts when my name comes over their lips, and tears run down their cheeks when they remember their relatives, parents, women, children or brothers and sisters. Then their spirit soars up to me, without any temple other than the sanctuary of his faith, without any altar other than that of his love, nor with any light other than that of his hope, desiring forgiveness for the destructions he has unwillingly caused with his weapons. They seek me to ask me with all the powers of their being, that I may allow them to return to their home, or that, if they must fall under the blow of the enemy, I at least cover with my cloak of mercy those who leave them on earth. 30. I bless all those who seek my forgiveness in this way, for they are not guilty of killing. Others are the murderers who, when the hour of their judgment comes, will have to answer to me for all they have done to human lives. 31. Many of those who love peace wonder why I have allowed them to be led even to the battlefields and places of death. To this I say to you, if their human mind cannot comprehend the reason that is present in the depths of all this, their spirit knows that it is fulfilling an atonement. 22, 52-55. 32. To those who follow me, I put the peace of the world on their heart, so that they may stand up for it and pray for it. The nations will soon send up their prayers to ask me for peace, which I have offered them at all times. 33. Before, I have allowed men to taste the fruit of their works, to see rivers of human blood flowing and images of pain, mountains of corpses and cities turned into ruins. I wanted people with petrified hearts to see the desolation of homes, the despair of the innocent, the mothers kissing the tattered bodies of their children out of pain, to experience at close range all the despair, fear and lamentation of men, so that in their arrogance they might feel humiliation and their conscience might tell them that their greatness, power and wisdom are lies, that the only truly great thing comes from the divine Spirit. 34. When these people open their eyes to the truth, they will be horrified, not at the horror images that their eyes see, but at themselves, and since they cannot escape the gaze and voice of their conscience, they will feel within themselves the darkness and fire of remorse, for they will have to give account for every life, for every pain, and even for the last drop of blood that has been shed because of them. 52:40. 35. Step by step the nations go towards the valley of death, where they gather to be judged. 36. But still those men who make war and whose hands are stained with the blood of their fellow men dare to speak my name. Are these the flowers or fruits of the teaching I have taught you? Have you not learned from Jesus how he forgave, how he blessed the one who hurt him, and how he gave life to his executioners while still dying? 37. Men have doubted my words and neglected the faith, therefore they have put all their trust in violence. Then I have allowed them to see their own error by reaping the fruit of their works, for only then will they open their eyes to understand the truth. 119, 31-33. The reprehensibility and senselessness of war. 38. It is time for love, forgiveness and humility to spring from the hearts of men, as true weapons that stand against hatred and arrogance. As long as hatred meets hatred and arrogance meets arrogance, the nations will destroy each other and there will be no peace in the hearts. 39. People do not want to understand that they can find their happiness and progress only in peace, and they run after their ideals of power and false greatness, shedding the blood of their fellow men, destroying life and destroying the faith of men. 39, 29-30. 40. The year 1945 took with it the last shadows of the war. The sickle mowed down thousands of existences and thousands of spiritual beings returned to their spiritual home. Science amazed the world and made the earth tremble with its weapons of destruction. The victors made themselves the judges and executioners of the defeated. Pain, misery and hunger spread and left widows, orphans and cold in their wake. Diseases spread from nation to nation, and even the forces of nature let their voice of justice and outrage over so many evil deeds be heard. A wreckage of destruction, death and devastation is the mark that man, who calls himself civilized, left on the face of the planet. This is the harvest that this humanity offers me. But I ask you, is this harvest worthy to come into my granaries? Does the fruit of your wickedness deserve to be accepted by your Father? Verily, I tell you, this tree is anything but the one you could have planted if you had obeyed that divine commandment which is to love one another. 145, 29. 41. When will you obtain the peace of the Spirit, if you have not even obtained the peace of the heart? I tell you, until the last fratricidal weapon is destroyed, there will be no peace among men. Fratricidal weapons are all those with which people take each other's lives, destroy morals, deprive each other of freedom, health, peace of the spirit, or destroy faith. 119, 53. 42. I will prove to mankind that their problems will not be solved by force and, as long as they make use of destructive and murderous weapons, will not be able to make peace among men, however terrible and powerful these weapons may seem. On the contrary, as a consequence they will only arouse greater hatred and more desire for revenge. Only conscience, reason and the feelings of charity will be able to be the foundations on which the age of peace rests. But in order for this light to shine in the interior of men, they must first empty the cup of suffering to the last drop. 160, 65. 43. If the heart of man had not been so hardened, the pain of war would have been enough to make him reflect on his errors, and he would have returned to the way of light. But although he still has the bitter memory of those human slaughters, he is preparing for a new war. 44. How can you assume that I, the Father, divine love, would be able to punish you through wars? Do you really believe that someone who loves you with perfect love and desires you to love one another can commit crime, fratricide, killing, revenge, and destruction? Do you not understand that all this is due to the materialism that men have accumulated in their hearts? 174, 50-51. 45. I created man free from the beginning, but his freedom was always accompanied by the light of conscience. Yet he has not listened to the voice of his inner judge, and has strayed from the path of the law until he has created those murderous, bloody, and monstrous wars in which the child has risen up against the father because he has turned away from every feeling of humanity, mercy, respect, and spirituality. 46. Human beings should have long since avoided destruction and wars, in order to spare themselves a painful duty of atonement. Know that if they do not succeed in purifying themselves in good before they reach me, I must send them again to this valley of tears and blood. For whoever lives in a sense directed against perfection will not be able to come to me. 188, 6-7. 47. Not all men are on the same level of understanding. While some discover miracles at every turn, others regard everything as imperfect. While some dream of peace as the summit of spiritualization and the morality of the world, others proclaim that it is wars that drive the development of humanity. 48. To this I say to you, the wars are not necessary for the development of the world. If men use them for their ambitious and selfish purposes, it is because of the materialization in which those who favor them find themselves. Among these, some believe only in existence in this world, since they do not know or deny the spiritual life, but among men they are considered scholars. It is therefore necessary that all should know this revelation. 227, 69-70.